Expectations are a premeditated opportunity to be disappointed. Business is a fluid, crazy, fun thing to be involved in. The number one thing leaders have to do is they have to take care of themselves. People have to catch on fire from you because the closer you get to the goal, the more light is shed on what needs to be done. You put one good habit in place, it will chase a bad habit out the back door.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Profession Session. My goal with this podcast is to expose you to incredible entrepreneurs so that you can hear more about the mindset behind their success, as well as some of the tactics that have allowed them to achieve the success. If you've ever gotten value from this, or if you get value from this episode, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and especially to share this podcast with as many people as you can so that it can help other aspiring entrepreneurs to have the kinds of success that these ones have had. Thank you so much and enjoy this episode.
I guess the best place to start is just a little bit about how you got into this initially. How did you first start coaching and consulting on this, and what led you there?
Well, just like most people, I got my very first job. And, a long, long time ago, Brody, I got my very first job and I worked in a wonderful place that had a wonderful culture. And inside that culture, it was a little Baskin Robbins store in Tremainsville, on Tremainsville Road in Toledo, Ohio. But I worked for a wonderful leader, and his name was Mr. Sansone. And he told me this really important thing, Brody, which I thought was great. He said, Nicole, if you come work here, it's really important that you understand one thing. And I said, well, what's that? I'm just a baby. He's like 16 years old. And he says, there are four families that depend on this business to work to keep a roof over their head and the electricity on. And I was like, "Oh, must be more serious than I thought," scooping ice cream. And he was like, "It's very important that we, exercise business acumen and that we treat each other kindly and that we take care of each other. And when you leave this store, you have it ready for the next person to come in." So right out of the gate, he told me that, this is a business, but businesses support families and people that work here. And that was I can't even imagine a better beginning to a career, even though it was at the Baskin Robbins in Tremainsville Road, Toledo, Ohio.
I think it's very interesting what he did there. He set the stage and set the expectation. Could you talk a little bit about what what the best practices are when you're setting the expectation for a new employee?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, first of all, I want to give you a little quote, if I might. Can I do that real quick? Because
Absolutely.
get your pens out, everybody, because everybody loves this quote.
Got mine
Uh,
right
it,
here.
okay, good. It goes like this: uncommunicated expectations are a premeditated opportunity to be disappointed. And
Wow.
so, if isn't that good? I'll say it again because it's got a lot of SAT words in it. Uncommunicated expectations are a premeditated opportunity to be disappointed. So, a lot of times leaders will say something to me, and in essence, they're kind of complaining or like kind of muttering about like how things are. And if things aren't the way that you want them, it's because you haven't communicated how you want them. And I think the vast majority of our employees want to know the expectations, because if we know them, we know how to hit the target, we know how to get to the goal. And so setting those out is really important. So I'm going to keep talking about Mr. Sandstone because he was such a good example. So he told me that. The other thing that he did is when he kind of onboarded me in this little ice cream store in Ohio, he said, I'm going to give you your uniform and I'd like you to go into the employee bathroom and I'd like you to put it on and let's talk about your uniform. And I was like, okay, because what do I know? I'm 16, so I go put my little uniform on. And if for all of you that are over 40 listening, I mean, like I had chocolate brown pants on. I had on a hot pink shirt that was, had a big logo that said 31 flavors, and I had a ball cap that was chocolate brown with the same logo. And he said, I want you to come out here and take a look at yourself in the mirror. And he had a little mirror, one of those full size mirrors you put on the back of your bedroom door. And he says, I want you to look at yourself. He said, I want you to have all of this on every time you come. And do you see how this is not wrinkled and it's clean? And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "That's exactly how I want you to look." He said, "There's only one thing missing. I need you to buy some black tennis shoes with non-skid soles." I said, "Okay," you know, and so, I mean, I just this is how work is, that you get these very clear directions, and so, I mean, I heard him loud and clear. Don't come in here with a uniform that just, came out of the dryer after sitting in there for 3 weeks. It was all in a ball, come in here wrinkle-free and clean and ready to go to work. So, I think it's about communicating, having one-on-one time. One of the biggest mistakes people make, Brody, that I see in businesses is they hire somebody new and they send them an electronic. Now we send people an electronic employee handbook and they sign on their computer. They don't even use a real pen anymore. They sign on their computer that they received it. Now, just ask yourself, how many people read this thing?
None.
Right, nobody's reading it. And so we have uncommunicated expectations. Now you can say, well, it was in the book, but it's a whole different thing to like sit with somebody and go through it. So whenever I talk with HR professionals and leaders, I say, you got to go through the employee handbook page by page. And they're like, page by page. And I'm like, yes, because people might have a question, they might have a concern. Get it addressed up front, and then you won't have problems 6 weeks from now, and then you'll be irritated because you'll be, disappointed because you had uncommunicated expectations. So I think that's number 1, and then I think also the other, tip I would give or strategy I would give around setting up proper expectations is, how you answer an ad to get a job, and it's a lot of times a lot like the job description. Hopefully, it's not exactly the same. Hopefully, the recruiter's doing a little better job than just posting the job description. But you get this job description. I think it's really important once the person's hired to go through it again, line by line, and say, hey, here's what your job involves. What resources do you need for me? What are your thoughts? What are your concerns? And here's the thing, Brody. At the bottom of every job description, we all know what it says down there. It says, and anything else your leader needs you to do. And I think instead of glossing over that one last little line that's on the bottom of those job descriptions, we need to say, let me tell you what that means in my mind. What it means in my mind is that y- your job in 21st century America is going to morph and change, maybe weekly, daily. It just depends on what's going on with our business. And I need you to be agile. So I'm not saying that I'm going to, pay you the same money and increase your workload by two, but there might be days that it feels like that because we got an order or we got an opportunity that we have to seize. And so I need you to be okay with that. And you're like on day one, day two of somebody's employment, and you ask them that, are you okay with that? You know what they usually say? They go, sure. Now, if they've been working there 8 months, they might not say sure. So you got to get people acclimated to your way of thinking and, you know, tell them what might come. And that business is a fluid, crazy, fun thing to be involved in. It's not predictable.
It certainly is not. I think that's really important, just setting those expectations. It creates the actual day-to-day expectation that they're going to be going through. Do you have any kind of frameworks or thoughts around the best way to walk through that now? Like any frameworks that come to mind that you think help guide that conversation?
Well, I think that you need to have an onboarding program and you need to have something laid out. Now, I do have a coaching methodology. And whenever I think about a process or a way that I do things, I always think through my Shine coaching methodology. So I put this together for years. Like in 2007, I got my first coaching certificate. And everybody listening, go get an International Coaching Federation coaching program under your belt. It will change your life. I became such a better person, Brody, once I got through coaching for a couple of reasons. One, it makes you so aware of the fact that you have potential. I mean, you as a business owner listening to this, You have so much potential to grow your business way past what you thought, or to start the new one that you're thinking about after you get help from Brody or whatever. And the people that work for you have so much untapped potential, but a lot of us are just on autopilot. And the second reason coaching is so fantastic is that during the coaching program, you practice on each other. So I got so much coaching. It was crazy. So I became a better person. All right. So my methodology is shine. So if I sit down to talk with anybody ever, my child, my husband, or an employee, a coworker, a peer, I'm going to take them through a process of self assessment, which is the S. I'm going to ask them about their habits, which is the H. I'm going to talk to them about the I, which is integrity. N, next right steps, and then finally the E, energy. So I put together my own coaching process because I kept seeing patterns. And one of the things that I love about self-assessment is instead of me sitting down with an employee and saying, this is how you're doing, and me doing a lot of telling, it's better for me to do this. How do you think you're doing? What's going on with your position? How, if it's onboarding, how have the first 3 days been? What has been your experience? What are you learning? Right? So it's not so much that I want to tell in the beginning. I want to ask the questions so that my new employee is thinking and self assessing. I guess I'm doing pretty good because I met everybody and I learned how to do this process, or I ran the cash register by myself, or I have been answering the phone by myself, whatever their new task is. When people stop and look in the mirror and see how they're doing, you know who they see? They see themselves. And instead of looking around for somebody else to be responsible for their progress, they look at themselves for their progress. And when I look at myself for my progress, I take ownership of my progress. So that's the S.
I love it. I have an idea, if you're open to it, for kind
Yeah.
of showing like a real world example of this. Let's
Yeah.
say let's say that you've decided that there's too many people coming in to possibly keep up with all of it yourself. A lot of people all of a sudden really want to get some coaching from you on their business, and you decide you're going to hire an executive assistant, and this is your interview right now. Or maybe you've just decided that you're going to hire me as an executive assistant to manage some of your incoming calls and emails and requests. How might you structure the conversation with me on day one?
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so there is a coach. Every coach should have a coach, or they're a hypocrite. Dare I say that, Brody? Okay. So, I can't say that, you need coaching if I'm not getting it myself. So I have a coach, and my coach is Dan Sullivan, and his company's called The Strategic Coach. And I have been coached by them for about 6 years now, I guess. And one of the tools that I got from Strategic Coach was this tool called the impact filter. And the impact filter is so valuable because what it does is it says, what are we trying to impact? So instead of what's the task, what are we trying to impact? So the first line on there is, what is it that we're impacting? And what we're impacting, if you were going to take my phone calls from me, because I'm so busy over here coaching, I can't answer my phone anymore. The impact is that you're going to have an impact on the first impression of everybody who makes a phone call, and you are going to have an impact on my life because you're going to handle it professionally. You're going to get the proper information, and you're going to do all of this as a total professional, right? So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing that we do is we kind of go to the future and we envision, so how will Brody behave? What will his conduct be? What will his tasks be? How will he do it? Right? So let's paint a little picture. So what has to be what has to be true about this thing? So I would say, well, you have to answer the phone within 2 rings. You have to smile when you answer the phone, because you can answer the phone like this, hello, and you can answer the phone like this, hello, right? So I mean, I have to be so dialed in. I have to, again, set those expectations. And so I say, what does it need to look like? So I get that written down. Then we move into what has to be true for this to be real, proper, good, excellent. And so we go through and we write down what the criteria is. So we write down, the customer's happy. Nicole is happy. The CRM is filled out. We go through and we figure out all the things. And it's not difficult to do. It just takes a little bit of time. And this is very important, discipline, to sit your fanny in a chair and think about what it is you want Brody to do. Then you're going to have to sit your fanny in a chair again and get Brody in there, get his fanny in a chair, and then we're going to go through it and we're going to have a dialogue about it. So I think a lot of times there's all this email going back and forth, and go check the portal and the whatever Microsoft Apple thing for the details. But they are never as communicated as effectively as if we can paint a picture of success for people, we can lay out the success criteria, and we sit with people and have a conversation for a hot minute. If I did that with you to answer my phone, I think you'd be very successful very quickly. Now, at the bottom of the impact filter, there's two questions that are so, so important. The bottom, it says, what is the best outcome if Brody gets this strategy down pat? Answering the phone for Nicole, taking phone calls for Nicole. Well, the best thing that could happen is that Nicole could have more clients, earn more money, have her calendar full, raise her rates, give Brody a promotion. I mean, you can dream up anything you want about what's the best scenario from this, but all of those things are true. If Brody's doing a fantastic job keeping that customer happy and we're booking coaching sessions like mad people around here, all that could happen. And then you ask the final question, what's the worst thing that could happen if Brody does not do this well? And don't miss that you're sitting with Brody while we're talking about this. And so I say, here's the worst thing that could happen, Brody, is that you make people upset. They give us a bad Google review. They go on to Yelp and give us a bad review there too. They start talking bad about us everywhere, and we go out of business. And whenever I do this little exercise with people, that's always the final thing. We go out of business. But it's true. I mean, if you can't answer the phone correctly and you can't secure business, that's exactly what happens. So, that's a great little tool to use real time. And you can just listen to the questions I asked and write them down, or you can email me, Nicole at Vibrant Culture, and I'll share it.
I love that. That's such a good framework, the impact filter, because I think it when you do see it through that lens and you do see that your actions directly have an influence on the business as a whole, I think it makes
Hmm.
it a lot more comprehensible to the person that is thinking about their job. They start, rather than thinking of it through this narrow scope of I'm doing this job, and if I don't do my job, I don't know, my job just doesn't get done. They see it as if I don't get my job done, the business doesn't succeed. It reminds me of
Hmm.
I was just at a conference and I heard Jocko Willink speak, and
Oh my,
he was fantastic.
I bet.
He spoke a lot about leadership and how it the lessons that he's learned extend to the world of business. And one thing he talked about is how he called it cover and move. And if you think about kind of a gunfight where they're covering for someone and then the other person moves to the next station and they cover for the person so they can move. He talked about how if if one of them breaks the chain and they don't cover for the others, then they let them get taken out and then they don't have cover for them to move. And so the point was, if everyone doesn't do their job, then no one succeeds. And I think being
Oh,
able
that's
to
right.
communicate it in that way and show the actual impact through the impact filter paints the entire picture of this is an entire ecosystem and a team, and this is your role in it.
Yeah, and, I was having a whole James Bond moment in my mind when you were talking about cover and move, and, but James Bond is not for real, everybody. Real humans have to cover and move. I mean, only James Bond can, snip the cords to the bomb in the last, tenth of a second. I mean, that's just really not happening out there in the world. So, yes, we need each other. You cannot be some rogue James Bond, although I do love James Bond.
Now, we talked about the shine framework. I think that was really a great way of thinking about how to set the stage and how to have that conversation. What about how to affect the culture on a day-to-day basis? What are some things that someone should be thinking about as far as what their best practices are, what types of things they need to be doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to keep weaving in kind of some of the things from the Shine Coaching methodology because I think that they match with the question that you're asking. Number one, we are doing daily coaching with people. We're letting people know if their behavior, if their task, if their achievements are helping the organization or hurting the organization. Okay. So I think giving people a lot of real time feedback is important. So I'm going to tell you about a little book. It's an old book. It's called How Full is Your Bucket? And so this book, I don't know when it was written. We should Google it. But anyways, it's a long time ago. And so this little book is a gem though, because in the book it says that every human is wandering around in your organization, in your culture, and their emotional bank account is either full or somewhere between full and empty. Okay. And people who become vibrant, okay, means that they're lit from within. They're happy, excited, and love working with you, right? That's a vibrant employee. One that's like, oh my gosh, what are we doing today? What's happening today? Oh, we got a new project, fantastic. Like these kind of attitudes and energy. So if I have Brody on my team and he's doing a great job, and I catch him doing a great job, I say something to him, but I don't say, "Good job, Brody," because he doesn't know what I'm talking about. Now he's like, "Well, of course, I'm awesome," but he doesn't know what I'm talking about. So I have to give very specific feedback. Okay, so I give him very specific feedback, and he hears what I have to say, and he goes up the feeling scale like by a bump. His emotional bank account goes up by a bump. Now, here's the thing. In the little book, How Full is Your Bucket, it says that a piece of positive feedback is not as impactful as a negative or corrective piece of feedback. All right. So I literally have to catch Brody doing 8 things correctly in order to give him a negative piece of feedback. Okay. Now, here's the thing. The thing that Brody's doing, it's just this little thing he does. And it's starting to drive me crazy. Like, let's say he interrupts in meetings. Okay, which he does not do.
Sounds
Notice
like
how he's
something I
not doing it.
might do.
No, you're not doing it right now, so I don't think you do it. So, but have you ever worked with an interrupter?
Oh yeah.
Oh, oh, it's so irritating, right? Okay, so I am really vigilant and diligent to catch Brody doing things good. Now, the first reason you do that as a leader or an owner of a company is that way people go, first of all, the leader is paying attention. Don't miss that. Please don't miss that. The leader is paying attention. How many of y'all have ever worked for somebody that you're like, they're not paying attention? And so it's really important to pay attention. So anyway, so she's paying attention to me. Okay. Now, after a lot of positive feedback, Brody begins to think, Nicole's pretty thoughtful. I think she cares about me. In fact, I think she likes me. Okay. And that is so important in a culture for people to feel a sense of belonging. Does everybody remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? One of the things is I've got to have food and shelter. One is I've got to have a sense of belonging or love. So Brody's like, Nicole loves me. She gives me lots of good feedback. And that's a wonderful part of a culture. Now, if he does something like this interrupting thing, I go to give him that piece of feedback about interrupting, and it's going to wipe out all 8 positive things I told him, because in the book they did the research and they said it's an 8-to-1 ratio. Like, don't miss that.
That is
So
huge.
I know. And so he's like a little devastated for a minute. He's like, whoa, what? And might even think, I thought you loved me. I thought you thought I was great. And it's like, I do. And that's why I'm giving you this corrective piece of feedback. Because on my watch, you're going to be even more amazing. And of course, he goes, "Yeah, yeah, you're right. I'm going to stop doing that." Okay. So giving feedback, celebrating when people are doing well, takes them, up to a full emotional bank account. And then that way you can give correction and coaching without them getting devastated or mad or getting their resume together. And that paying attention to people is really important. And I have a little formula for feedback if you'd like to hear that.
I would love to. And I just wanted to kind of make one more note on that. You mentioned it's like an emotional bank account. I think
Yeah,
it sounds like you've got to make at least 8 deposits to make a single withdrawal is the takeaway there.
that's right.
And if you can, maybe if you can even make 9 or 10 deposits per withdrawal, then you end up with a compounding goodwill with your employee.
You nailed it. That's exactly the point. And there's another book by the same author, and I don't know if any of y'all have ever heard of this gentleman, but his name is Ken Blanchard. He's still on the planet. He's in his 80s, and he wrote lots of books, lots and lots of books. You should read all Ken's stuff. But his other little book was called The 1 Minute Manager. And this is again very old, but so stinking good and classic. And you can read it in an afternoon. And he said one of the things leaders do is they MWBA MBWA manage by walking around. And that's where you're paying attention. Go catch people working hard and then say something. So here's the feedback formula that I have. It's called a C3, and it just keeps leaders safe. It just makes you smart. Gives you, and I don't know about, I mean, Brody and I are all up in the formulas and the tricks and the stuff. And so if I can remember this, it helps me do feedback correctly. So the first thing is explain the circumstances that you're witnessing so people know exactly what you're talking about. The next C is the conduct that you're looking at, or the tasks that are getting done, or the way that people are doing things, or the attitude that they have. But conduct is number two. And then the third thing is consequences. So, did anybody have to take this class called physics? Did you take that, Brody? Were you? Oh
I
my
did.
God. Remember, every action has an equal and corresponding reaction. Do y'all remember this? All right. So, I think that's all I remember from physics class. But it's true in life too, right? So if somebody's doing a good behavior, demonstrating a good piece of conduct, attitude, whatever, it's going to have an impact, right back to the impact filter, right? So I look at what the consequences are of this behavior. So it might sound something like this if it was a celebratory, as I like to call it. I want to celebrate this person. I'd say, Brody, you didn't even know I was watching you this afternoon between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, but I was waiting on a customer in the lobby and I listened to you answer the phone 8 times. Now, is that very clear about the circumstances? It's between 2 and 3. We're in the lobby, you're on the phone, and there were 8 phone calls. I mean, that's really dialed in, right?
Mhm.
And then I say to him, it was pretty busy and you maintained your emotional intelligence. You were quick, you were efficient, but I don't think the customer thought you were too quick. And you had a smile on your voice, and like even people came in the front door and you gave them a little wink, like, I'm on the phone. Man, you're a master juggler. And you know what? I'm really glad you're on our team. And I'm proud that we provide such excellent customer service. Thank you. That's an excellent piece of feedback.
It is. I
Yeah.
think that another thing that does, aside from just fill the emotional bank account, is that it reinforces the good actions that you want them to continue taking. Because I think people don't necessarily automatically continue to take the right actions if they're not reinforced and if they're not rewarded.
I couldn't agree more. And it's like, if you want people to do more of something, celebrate what they're doing, right? If you want them to do less of something, then you're going to have to give a corrective piece of feedback. So, let's pretend we have an employee named Jack. That's my dog's name. He's over here in the chair. And so he's taking a nap. It's the middle of the day. I don't know what he's doing. So let's give Jack a piece of feedback. Okay. So it would sound like something like this. It would say, Jack, today at 2:39 p.m. during the workday, you laid in the chair in my office for 2 hours straight, upside down with your paws in the air, and got nothing done. And consequently, I'm not sure why I have you on the payroll. No, it's kind of a joke, but what you do is you'd say, Jack, I went by your office and you were on the phone, you were laughing. I think you were talking about your NFL dream team. What's that thing called? Fantasy
Fantasy
something.
football.
Yeah, you were talking about your fantasy football team, and I needed to talk to you. And like I came down to your office like 3 times. You were still on the phone with whoever that was. And consequently, now I'm about 45 minutes behind, and I'm concerned about your focus. And then you say this very simple thing: "What's up?" Okay? That's what you say after you deliver that, because people are like, "It's weird if you just say that and stop." And I say, "Well, then just throw that on the end. What's up?" Let them explain themselves. I mean, there will be no good excuse for being on the phone talking fantasy football for 45 minutes. But
I like that a lot, the what's up, because to me, what that does is it shows them that you don't necessarily think this is a normal thing for them. You think that something must be going on because this is not what you've come to expect from them. Versus just if you don't say the what's up, it probably just feels like you're venting at them and just feels like you're upset and like this has been building up. But you could say if you say the what's up, then Jack thinks, wow, you recognize that you first of all you're paying attention. Second of all, you recognize that I'm doing something out of my usual character and out of my usual what you would expect from me.
yeah, and it allows people to have an out, right? Or to explain, like, "Oh, I didn't take lunch today." I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was on his lunch hour. I have no idea. But if I come by your office and you look at me and don't say, "Oh, you don't have enough intuitiveness to say, I think she needs me," you know, then there's a problem. And we all know that there are bad apples in our barrel or in our bunch, right? And those bad apples need to be given feedback. And I think it's very, very important. And here's why. Uh, I'm concerned about that bad apple getting better. First of all, I just want to say I love people. You know how they go, I'm a people person. Nicole Greer is a people person to the nth degree. I want people to get the benefit of the doubt. I want to extend grace. I want to offer mercy. I want to do all those things. But if I do all those things and you take advantage of me, then I have to coach you in or I have to coach you out. And the way that I will coach you out of the business is by giving you feedback that you need. Now, here's the thing. I believe people can change. Now, Brody, I go all sorts of places and they're like, people don't change. And I'm like, no, they do. They really do. If they have a caring, loving leader who's on a mission to build a vibrant culture and get their people stoked and to love on them by giving them, again, 8 pieces of positive, catch me doing things right. Tell me what those things are so I do even more of them. It's kind of like you coach the bad behaviors out the back door you know? And I've only worked for like 2 companies in my whole career where I felt there was what we call a vibrant culture. And those things that we're talking about were true. There was a leader who cared, a leader who managed by walking around, a leader who offered a ton of feedback. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good worker, but John Gray, one of my leaders, he was always on me. And I think it's because he thought she has so much potential. She's got to know. I worked like a dog for that guy, and we did a lot of fantastic things together. So I think giving that feedback is really, really important. So that's one of the things that you do to build a vibrant culture.
You mentioned that you've only worked for 2 companies ever that you think had a vibrant culture. Why do you think it's so rare and so difficult for people?
First of all, I think leaders get fatigued and they lose their way. All right. So the number one thing leaders have to do is they have to take care of themselves. Okay. And you've got to learn to. Okay, so let's talk about delegation for a hot second. Okay, so everybody talks about delegation, but they don't necessarily do a great job of it, right? So one of the things that we have to do inside of our organization as a leader is we've got to sit down every once in a blue moon, and we've got to take an inventory of everything that we are doing, right? Like literally you're going to have a piece of paper and a pen. This is not rocket science. Don't say to me, "Well, how do I do that?" You get a pen and a piece of paper. And every time that you do an activity, you write it down. And you're like, okay, so I was reviewing the profit and loss statements. I was following up with the regional directors one by one and having a one on one with them. I was meeting with the board of directors. I was doing this. I was doing that. I was doing this. I was doing that. Now, at some point, you're going to be like, my plate is full. So I have to delegate to somebody some of these activities so that I can have some peace, have some rest, and I don't burn myself out because a burned out leader is down the emotional bank account scale, right? Like down the feeling scale. They're sad, they're mad, they're unhappy, and they wish somebody would help them. But you've got to do the hard work of figuring out what are you going to delegate, who are you going to give it to. And then you have that same conversation that Mr. Sansone had with me, right? Sit in a chair. This is what I need you to do. The conversation I had with Brody about answering the phone. I do an impact filter and I pass this information off to them. So I think the leaders that I had were overwhelmed, had too much on their plate, and were not scaling properly. And I bet you see that all the time.
I
The
do.
leader works around the clock. Yeah.
I do. It's a challenge that I face with owners that I talk to, and I kind of thought of something. I thought of this the other day, and you just reminded me of it. I thought there's almost a need for this role of like a consultant that whose job is literally to follow a business owner around for an entire week and just
Yeah.
document every single thing that they do. And I think there, if anyone's listening to this or watching this, that could be a really good fit for a position in the market because it's so hard, it's so difficult to do that documentation if you're in that place and you're so locked down in the business. It's the reason I'm growing my company very, very slowly because I'm trying to document everything as I go. And you have to move slowly to do that. But I think it allows you to scale properly when you do.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the EOS Entrepreneurial Operating System? Have you heard of this?
I actually haven't. No. What is that?
Okay. All right. Well, there's a book by Gino Wickman, um, and I think it's called EOS. I hope I have my story right. But anyways, he wrote this book. Oh no, I got it. It's called Traction. His system's called EOS. I got it now. All right. So in his book, he talks about what you're talking about. That usually the person that starts the company is like the visionary. And usually, not always, but a lot of the time, I would think 70% of the time, this person is quick to start things and excited about the future and lives 10 years in advance of where they are on the calendar. Okay. There's like, you know what we could do? We could do all these things. Right. And so that's the entrepreneurial spirit, right? To begin things and start things. Now, to your point, every visionary needs to have somebody who is the guy or gal who does the everyday stuff. And in his book, he calls that person the implementer. And it's like they're almost equals, but the implementer is the solid, steady, reliable, systematic, procedure oriented person that takes the ideas of this excited entrepreneur, the creative, and puts it into a format so that it's easy to follow, repeatable, and scalable. I think what you're talking about is kind of that scenario. And I think that is a definite way that our head visionary does not get burned out. Plus, this implementer becomes so valuable to the entrepreneur that they are able to say, We're not going to start anything else right now
Yeah.
because we don't have the last 7 ideas done. But we're going to put it on the parking lot in the conference room, the piece of paper that says parking lot, and we're going to think about that for the future. Or we're going to have to hire people, or we're going to have to get a loan, or whatever all the things are that keep a business, moving forward or scaling. So I think that's definitely it. So yeah, the people that I work for that didn't have a vibrant culture, they were not vibrant themselves. And that's huge, Brody. And I talk about that with leaders. I'm like, you need to be lit from within personally. People have to catch on fire from you.
You used that acronym LIT a couple times, and I remember we had talked about that in one of our previous conversations. Could you go
Yeah.
over that and just what's involved with being lit?
Yeah, so first of all, it's kind of fun. I tell people I'm going to help you get lit, and they're like, "What?" So, what it means though is that I'm going to remind you why you started this business, or why you took this role as vice president of whatever, or you took this role as CEO of whatever. So most people that are leading an organization, I think they want a big fat paycheck. That's true. Like, I'll be in charge because I'll get the biggest paycheck. I get that. But I don't think that's the number one reason that people want to be in a leadership role. I think what they want to do is they want to make a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs would say, right? So it's like, can you remember why you took this role, or why you thought this idea or this business was a good idea? It probably serves a group of stakeholders that need this business in a serious way, right? And so you got to kind of remember that. And then once you have kind of your why reestablished in your mind, you've got to lead people with clarity. And so you need to have a strategic plan. Now, strategic plans, many companies have them, but you know what I am noticing, Brody, is most people, the only strategic thing they do at the end of the year, or before the end of the year, like right now, it's October. This is prime budget time. If you have a fiscal calendar that goes from January to December, you're probably in the throes of doing budget right now, or you're getting rolling. Okay. Now, a budget is so important, right? Because we have to have this little funny thing called cash flow. However, a budget is not a strategic plan. Most budget process is like, what did we spend last year? And what do we think we need to increase it to or decrease it to this year? And so it's more of moving some levers around, and it's probably based on some kind of pro forma or forecast. But a strategic plan is much bigger. It's like, where are we going? What is exciting? Now, are budget meetings exciting? Everybody shake your head. No, they're terrible. Okay, because we're sitting around talking about money, and money's important, but like, we want to spend way more than we can, and that's depressing, and all that stuff happens in the budget meeting. Now, a strategic plan is like, okay, what new products, what new services, what markets could we go into? And it should be this thing of developing what I call an introspective. Okay. So with strategic planning, I have another little model for you, Brody. It's called IRP. IRP. And so you go out to the future and you dream up this most beautiful, amazing future. What's it going to look like? Right. And so you dream up what it's going to look like for 5, 10 years from now. Now, a lot of people are like, You're going to go 10 years out. What about if COVID happens again?" Well, God forbid that happens again, but you still have to do it anyway. Okay, you have to let your imagination run wild and come up with an introspective. So I'm going to give you a little story to tell, or I'm going to tell you a little story to listen to, not to tell, to listen to, as I go through the herb. So there's a little company over in Tennessee, and it's called Pals. Have you ever eaten at a Pals before, Brody? Have you ever eaten at this
I
place?
haven't. No.
Okay, well, I hadn't eaten there till about 3 years ago. And I heard the story about it, and I thought, by God, if I get over to Tennessee, and I did, I went to Johnson City, Tennessee, and I ate at the Pals. All right. So Pals is this little cinder block building. It is bright blue, like the blue in my Vibrant Culture logo back here. So that's a very bright building. And then they have like a giant hot dog on the outside of it, and a giant Coke drink on the outside of their building. You do not go inside to eat. You just go through the drive-through. And they have what they call sudden service. So you literally pull up to the window. There's no talking to the speaker. You go up to the window and you're like, "I'd like a hot dog with chili, onions, mustard, and a Diet Coke." And they say, "Okay." And you go around the building and it's hanging out the window. It's called sudden service. All right. So these people are amazing. And I don't know if you eat hot dogs, but like,
Occasionally.
this is a really good hot dog. But anyway, so have a salad, everybody. But so it's a hot dog with a Diet Coke. That's probably chemical warfare. But anyway, so it's delicious. And so you get your hot dog. Okay. Now here's the thing. They won the Malcolm Baldrige Award, which is one of the highest awards you can get in the United States of America for being excellent, and they applied for it. So this little company decides to, and they get it. It's huge. This is a huge accomplishment. Well, then they're like, well, what will we do next? We won the Malcolm Baldrige Award. Well, the thing that they did next is they said, you know what? So many people after they won the Malcolm Baldrige Award called them and said, how do you do it? So they started a whole fast food training company.
Wow.
So like that's a vision, right?
Yeah.
And that's really forward thinking. And so the leaders lead with clarity and they tell the people that work for them, here's where we're going. We're going to get the Malcolm Baldrige Award, okay? And here's how we do it, right? And then lays out the strategic plan. Then they say, we're going to start a training company. Here's how we're going to do it. And it's exciting, and the people that make these hot dogs are having a stinking good time because they work for a great company. So that's the L in lit. Lead with clarity. Cast a picture of the future. Get an introspective of how you're going to get it done. Okay. Now the R is retrospective, right? And that is turning around from the future and saying, what is it going to take to get where we want to go? Right? And so that's where the strategic planning comes in. So if we want to win the Malcolm Baldrige Award, what has to happen? Well, first of all, we have to understand what's the criteria. So we're going to train everybody on the criteria for the Malcolm Baldrige Award. We're going to lay out, strategies and techniques and tactics that each store has to do. We're going to have a communication plan. We're going to have a change management plan. We're going to have a project manager in charge of this whole thing. These are all the things that have to happen to make it happen. And so once we cast the vision and we get the introspective, we get the retrospective, we figure out what will it take to get there, then we put them together and we get a prospect and then we start working. And that prospective, like from Propel, it's a fired up bunch of people who understand here's where we're going and here's how we're going to get there. And that's ERP. Okay. So that's another little tool underneath the L, lead with clarity. Now, the second thing in lit is integrity. Now, here's what I know. Working with people who have ethics and morals and good character and manners, it makes it a great place to work. But if you work somewhere where people have poor character traits, lousy morals, no manners, it's a terrible place to work. Now, I'll talk to leaders and I'm saying, you have to work on character. And they're like, I shouldn't have to do that. Their mama should have told them how to do all that. And I'm like, well, congratulations, you're right. Mama should have told them. Grandma, Tia, whoever, daddy, grandpa, whoever should have taught them. But here's what I know. I mean, Brody, have you met rude people that are grown people?
Oh yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. And so in your company, you can't allow poor ethics, poor morals, poor behavior, poor manners to kind of go on. You've got to have some kind of character development. And so there's a couple of things I want to say about that. One, here's another book. Write this down, everybody. It's called Return on Character. It's by Fred Kiel, and I think it's Kiel. And in his book, he did research on how companies did based on um, character development. So he watched companies that intentionally talked about character and had a character development, leadership development program, very robust, and one that had zero. Okay. And the companies with leadership development and character development, they had 5 times return on assets. So everybody who's listening that owns a business, what does your balance sheet say? How much are your assets? Okay, is it $1? Is it $1 million? Is it $100 million? What if you had 5 times return on that just because you are intentional about talking about integrity? Now the funny thing about integrity, Brody, is that like people have it as a core value and they think that's enough. Like it's on some sign in the lobby. We're a company of integrity. Well, you got to tell people what that means. You got to explain it. And I think character development is huge. Now, there's a tool that I use in my business. It's called the Tilt, and it's the Tilt leadership model. And have you ever done a personality assessment before, Brody? I bet you your listeners have.
I have. I'm a junkie on those. I love it.
Oh, okay, great.
The
All right, which one?
the 16 personalities is the one that I do like as a refresher every couple of years. The Myers Briggs one, where it's got like one
Yeah.
extra facet too. I love that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, all of them are so good. Yeah, like, so I'm certified in the Myers-Briggs, there's the DISC, there's the path element profile, there's all of these things. I got them all in my toolbox, but I'm gonna talk about one, the tilt, because it tells you your little personality. But the reason I love the tilt so stinking much is because it says, "This is your personality. This is your natural bent." Like left to your own devices, this is kind of how you're going to roll. That's what personality tests tell you. Now, the tilt says you're a grown person. You need to be balanced and conscious of what you're doing. So, what it says in the tilt training is, you're wired like this, but you need to learn to tilt over to these other styles because sometimes the other styles work better in that scenario you're sitting in, right? So a good example of that is, obviously, I've got this personality that's, outgoing, maybe a little loud, whatever, all that. And on the tilt, mine is called an impact. Like when Nicole goes in somewhere, she brings all this energy, she's going to share and, bring a lot of energy with her. It's an impact, right? Now, that's wonderful, but what if we don't need that right now? What if we need clarity? Right? So that's the opposite tilt of an impact is clarity. Maybe we need to sit still. Maybe we need to do some research. Maybe we need to look at what the data says before we start changing things and talking about things and dreaming stuff up, which is what I love to do, which is also important. But these two things balance each other out, right? And so the tilt talks about gaining these other character traits, and you can work on them. Character traits can be taught because I bet you, I don't know, Brody, we didn't talk about your growing up years when we got to know each other on the phone the other day, but did you have somebody in your life that told you, do this, don't do that?
Yeah, my mom was pretty good about that.
Yeah, right? And so, it needs to continue through our adult life and our work life. Don't do this, do that. And here's why. So for example, I have a young man that I've worked with for a little while now, and one of the things about his character is he's a little blunt, and he'll even say, "Well, I'm blunt." And so I was like, "So how's that working for you?" I did a Dr. Phil on him. I'm like, "How's that working for you?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know." And I'm like, "Well, I I think that that's probably a problem because just think about it. It's like you hit me with a blunt object. You hit me with your words, So there's this other thing. Instead of being blunt, I could be considerate, which is a much better character trait. So I don't need to hit you with my words. I just need to deliver my words in a way that's kind, generous, thoughtful, considerate. So, we all have a little bit of work to do on our character, and it never ends. And the last thing I'll say about integrity is that again, it's confusing to people. They think they've got it. Like Brody, that thing you went to at the big conference. So, I don't how many people are in the audience? I'm curious.
About 5,000.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, where was it at? Some
It
football
was
stadium or something?
it was here in Orlando at the Orlando World Marriott Center. It's a massive, massive conference hotel. We've got some crazy ones here.
I bet. That sounds epic. All right. So, if you asked all 5,000 of those people in the audience, "Are you a man or a woman of integrity?" Everybody would be like, "Yes, I am." And they'd all be liars. And I know that's so controversial for me to say that, but here's the truth about integrity. It's not a constant thing. It comes and it goes. And I find that people lose their integrity when four things are going on. So remember, you asked me the question about the leaders that were not vibrant, didn't have vibrant cultures. These are leaders who had fallen out of integrity. Now that sounds like they were, I don't know, murdering people or lying or cheating or stealing money or whatever. It's not that. It's like they just lost their way. They lost their enthusiasm, which is a character trait. They lost their willingness to go and walk around the building and visit the employees. They lost their ability to be inspirational. See, all of those are character traits. And people lose their integrity when four things are going on. They're hungry. Have you ever been hangry? I get
Yeah.
hangry easy.
Oh yeah.
I like my square 3 a day, you know what I'm saying, Brody? And so, like, if I miss lunch by 5 o'clock, I'm like, "All right, I
You're
don't
like,
care
I
what's
just fell
happening,
out of
we're eating."
integrity. I'm
That's right.
I'm out of integrity until I get a Cliff Bar.
That's right, because, like, I might be a little short with my husband. I mean, should I be short with my husband? Should I be snippy with him? No. Should I yell at the dog, kick the dog? No, I shouldn't do any of those things just because I'm hungry. But sometimes, our physiological thing, which again, bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, so people are hungry, they're angry about something. That's A, hungry, angry, lonely. Nobody's paying attention to me. Nobody's helping me, or they're tired. So that's halt. HALT. So when people fall out of integrity, it's usually because they're hungry, they're angry, they're lonely, they're tired, and they're just not bringing their full self. And the word integrity comes from the same word as integer, which we all remember from math class, means a whole number. And so we're just not whole right now. And so we're not on our best behavior. So I think integrity is a huge subject we need to bring to the workplace, and it will help you build a vibrant culture. The companies that use the tilt with me, they're working so hard on getting everybody more in balance around their personality.
I've never heard integrity put that way, and I love that because I'm guilty of it. I've always thought of it as kind of a character trait, maybe a spectrum of a character trait, but not something that is simply just you're either whole or you're not. And I actually love thinking of it that way. It makes you feel like, wow, I just need to get these couple things back, and I can make myself whole again and find my way again. I'm
Yeah,
I need to feed myself or find a way to not be so angry or what was L again?
lonely. Because have you ever heard people say this at work? Nobody's helping me. I'm doing this all by myself. And they get a little snippy and they get a little angry. All the things start happening, right? And it's like, leaders need to be whole themselves. They need to feed themselves. They need to practice emotional intelligence, which is the opposite of being angry. They need to surround themselves with a beautiful team, which is the opposite of being lonely, who they delegate to. And then if you're tired, you have got to pull away for a hot second and take care of yourself. You can't work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was talking to a gentleman. He was telling me that he works 12 hours a day, Monday through Saturday. And I didn't ask him what he did on Sunday because I know he just lays in bed. I mean, you know, and some people will go, I love it. And I just question it, because there needs to be balance in your life where I work hard so I can play hard. That's how I look at
Yeah.
my life. I mean, because this Saturday I'm gonna have a blast. I got plans, but I'm working really hard today and tomorrow to make Saturday happen. Right. And then when I come back on Monday, I'm like, guess what I did this weekend? And so some people will be like, well, I don't play hard. Well, maybe playing hard is like you go take a 5-mile walk in the woods, you go to the grocery store, you make a big pot of, spaghetti or whatever, and then you drink wine on the back porch. That's playing hard, It doesn't look like hard, but you got to have some things that balance you out with your work so you can stay lit. You can't keep burning the fire without putting a log on it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in a little bit of a startup phase with my business right now. And so
Yeah.
I went from being in a company where I was one of four partners to being in the startup phase. And so I was experiencing a lot of the loneliness aspect, and I
Oh,
felt it kind of eating away at my ability to stay vibrant, so to speak. And I noticed that after going to a couple conferences and surrounding myself with a lot of, because it's difficult to not get lonely as an entrepreneur. There were even
oh, for
speakers
sure.
at these conferences that talked about how being an entrepreneur is walking the lonely road. And so I found personally that surrounding myself with other entrepreneurs and people that were like-minded and working on similar things snapped me right out of that. It really put me back on track. And I think it is really to our benefit to be honest with ourselves about those types of things.
Oh, 100%. And I don't know what's going on with like the people who are in your, you only have one life. That's the other thing is people are like, you need my professional life or my personal life. This is one life. But like I have people in my personal life and they're like, Nicole, you're like 58 years old. What do you need to work this hard? I mean, like they don't understand the entrepreneurial drive. Like my girlfriends want to like play cards and go to the sip and paint or whatever. And I like all that stuff too. But it's like, no, I mean, I'm going to work for a very long time because this is my calling, my mission, my purpose. And I think entrepreneurs, the reason why they take all this on is because they've got that weird drive inside of them that sometimes people don't understand, so it can be very lonely.
It's isolating at times because you're in this position where you're delegating all these things away. It can even be isolating, I've found, within an organization because you're positioned up here at the top and then you're delegating these things away. So it's people don't necessarily feel like they can come to you if you aren't proactive about setting
Oh,
up
yeah.
a culture in which they feel like they can come to you.
Yeah, yeah, and, what you're talking about is, like, is the old open door policy thing. So I've got something I wanna say about the open door policy that just sparked my brain. Can I share that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know we should Google it. Who came up with the open door policy? Who dreamt that thing up? And sometimes leaders, the ones that are unhappy and sad, mad, and unglad, is they don't have any space to think. Like I can't think straight. And that's probably true. You can't think straight because you're allowing the phone to ring and you're answering it. And now, I mean, back in the day, all we had was phone and mail that came from the United States Postal Service. I know y'all can't believe that, you young people, but that's how. And then we got FedEx, and the world changed. We could get the piece of paper in a day. We thought this was a miracle, and now you can get it in a second through an email. But the thing is this open door policy doesn't mean your door is open 24/7. Like you need to pull yourself away and be unavailable. And in order to do that, you're going to have to, like I said earlier, get things delegated, get people very clear on the outcomes and the impacts you want them to have. And then you have to solicit um, their integrity and say, I need to go strategic plan. I need a hot day to dream up where we're going. So if you all could just handle it for the next 16 hours, I would be really grateful. And if people love you, they're like, we will protect you. We won't let anybody get through to you. Unless the building's burning down, but we're going to call the fire department first. And so, leaders have to, um, you know, protect themselves. Owners of businesses have to protect themselves. Don't go MIA. Tell people, I'm going away to think. I'll be back. Protect me, while I'm gone. Take care of things. And if you have a great team, people who are lit and love you, that's not a problem.
By the way, it was a Secretary of State of China in 1899, John Hay, that invented the open door
Oh,
policy.
oh, was it? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's hilarious. Well, okay, say it again. John Hay.
John Hay. John Hay. He invented
Oh
it
my
in
gosh.
1899.
Okay, so see, that's good. Well, and back in the day, I mean, I wasn't alive during there, so I'm not that old. But back when John Hay invented this, I mean, there was all this hierarchy, right? And the world was still very militaristic, and you were just told what to do and you did it. I mean, and even in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, all of your baby boomers that you work with, that's when they got their first job, and it was kind of like sit at your desk and do your work and don't ask any questions, and that's what everybody did because it was still very militaristic. We were coming out of World War II, and everybody was just kind of in that mindset. But nowadays, that hierarchy, it needs to be there so we know who's in charge in case something goes wrong. Because in an emergency, somebody one person needs to be in charge. But other than that, we've got to be so collaborative, and we've got to work with each other, and we've got to have each other's back, right? So we can close our door.
Exactly. And I think that when you create a culture of leaders, of people taking leadership on their own, that does a lot for the just the overall productivity and the culture overall, when people are used to taking leadership, there's just so you're capable of so much more as an organization and as a movement.
Yeah. And we didn't cover the T in lit, and it's transform the ordinary. And I think one of the things that leaders have to do to have a vibrant culture is they have to explain how business works to every single employee, everybody that works there. So everybody's got to understand that a business has to morph and change and grow. That is the nature of a business. A business is like a baby, it has to grow up. Okay. So, just like Brody said, I'm in the startup phase. So, he's got a little infant company, but then it's got to become an 8-year old, and then it's got to become a teenager, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So, we've got to tell people that what we're doing today is not what we're going to be doing next year this time. It might be similar, but there's going to be changes. And so we transform the ordinary by having a very intentional change management philosophy. So it's not like we have a change, we're in a constant state of change. We are going from the larvae to the butterfly all the time, right? And so we've got to talk about change and the fact that we can never say this is the way we've always done it. And so it requires a leader to talk about transforming the ordinary, challenging the status quo, and moving the needle on our productivity, the products the services we have, all the things that we have. So, quarterly at least, we're sitting down. It's like, okay, what are we doing? How can we make it better? And so there isn't any rest. That's why it's called work.
Yeah.
And you have to explain this field. We're here to work. Okay. But we're going to give you Saturday off. In fact, I'm recruiting right now for a company out in Colorado. Listen to this. They work Monday through Thursday. They work 4 10s, and the
Mm.
whole company has a 3-day weekend. Is this a fantastic thing or what?
I love that. I think it's
I do too.
I have a couple friends that work at Lockheed Martin here in town, and a lot of
Nice.
their company is on a 410, and they seem to really enjoy it because they know that they're working all day those 4 days, like they're really after it, but then they also it provides more flexibility too.
That's right. That's right. And you can go somewhere if you have 3 days, right? Like you can take off Thursday at 6 o'clock, and you can be, and if you live in Florida, hello, you could be somewhere fabulous
Yeah.
in a couple hours, right? And you can work hard, you can play hard. So that's another thing about a vibrant culture is that would be transforming the ordinary. What's the ordinary? Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So how do you switch it up, right?
I love it. Now, we've talked about a lot of different things here. I know that we talked about the shine framework, we talked about getting lit, we talked about the 3C. What are if there is one other thing that you could leave the audience with and wanted to just make sure that they understood about this whole thing to tie it all together, what would that be?
Yeah. Okay. So, in the Shine coaching methodology, we talked about self assessment. Ask people how they're doing. Make them take ownership of their performance, their productivity, who they are, what they're doing, all that stuff. The H is habit work. Okay. So, what habits make a company great? Which habits make your company great? Get those instilled in people. We talked about integrity. The N is for next right steps. And we talked a little bit about strategic planning. But I will say this as well, is sometimes a big giant dream, a big giant vision, we may not have to get everything figured out, but we do have to get up today and do the next right step, because the closer you get to the goal, the more light is shed on what needs to be done. So, it's like I'm overwhelmed. Okay, what's your next right step? The thing I'm going to leave everybody with, though, is the E in my Shine coaching methodology. Now, here is the truth about your business. If all of your employees and you were picked up by a UFO this afternoon and taken away, nothing will get done in your business for the rest of the day. Like, I don't care what products and services you have. I don't care if you've got some whiz bang thing the whole world needs. If you can't get it out the door, you can't get it delivered, you can't get it serviced, it don't matter. It just does not matter. So you got to have human resources. And inside of every one of your human resources and inside of you as a business owner or a leader, are 6 energies, and they are this. And the first one is intellectual energy. You have to teach people things. You have to pass on knowledge. One of the things I'm doing right now is I'm doing some succession planning with a manufacturing facility. We're looking around, we're like, hey, everybody here could, get an AARP card and they've got silver hair and, all this. And so we better figure out who's going to take over. So sometimes people have institutional knowledge that they need to be handing down. We've got to pass the knowledge around. You've got to feed people's brains. The next thing is people have emotional energy. We already talked about that, about their emotional bank account, right? You've got to keep people's hearts in the game. Third thing is spiritual energy. And spiritual energy is really at the heart of a vibrant culture. It's where the leader's excited, the leader is loving what we're doing, the leader is managing by walking around, messaging appropriately, being inspiring, and teaching all the other leaders how to do that. And it's kind of like this esprit de corps. It's French, and it means spirit of the heart. Okay. And so it's this spiritedness, this enthusiasm. So you've got to tell people stories, and you've got to share with them why they should get behind what we're doing. So you've got to be a little bit of an inspirational speaker if you're a leader. The next energy is physical energy. Okay. You've got to have a wellness program. And here's my big thing: stop having pizza parties. Buy everybody grilled chicken salad at the next meeting. Stop buying pizza. Feed people good food. Get rid of the vending machines. Buy bowls of apples and bananas and grass-fed beef jerky or whatever your thing is, and have that stuff sitting around. Okay. So, and give people an opportunity to go walk, to go to the gym, to get a massage, something, get a health savings account thing as part of your benefit program. So physical energy, we got to pay attention to that. And the leaders need to emulate it. Like the leaders need to look like they're on the health and wellness program. I'm just saying. Okay. And then physical energy, then there's social energy. And you've got to build a great team around yourself. You've got to have competitors that you're friendly with. Sometimes you can't do the job. You got to call a competitor that would do it just as good as you. And then finally, there's the energy of money. You got to have your personal bank account under control, and then a business needs to have that budget I talked about. Has to have sound fiscal process procedure. So there's 6 energies in a human resource and inside the company that we need to pay attention to. And so there's all sorts of strategies, systems, tips, techniques I could share about all that, but
Wow,
that's important.
that is good stuff. The health one, I'll share a little personal story about that.
Please.
My girlfriend has a long commute to work, almost an hour depending on traffic
Ooh,
each way, and she was just feeling very burned out at one point, and she started using her lunch hour to go get a workout in, and it was
nice.
completely transformative. Like completely transformative. She just felt way less burned out during the day, like on a weekly basis, just because she was kind of resetting herself in that way and keeping herself healthy. I think taking that time to get in a little bit of workout during the day it's very underrated. So I like that you included that as one of them.
Yeah, if I can share real quickly, I've got a company I work with. They're down in South Carolina. I'm in North Carolina, and they give people, how you can get like, I have the iWatch and it has the fitnessy thing on it. Well, there's the Fitbits, and so you can get a Fitbit that's like $30, and you get a Fitbit that's like $300, and they buy for every employee that works there the fancy one.
Wow.
And so, like on day one, they're like, "Here's your Fitbit." And like it doesn't matter what your physical status. Like, here's your Fitbit, and we want to encourage you to get 10,000 steps in a day. So if you have a meeting, we'd like you to walk and talk. If you're taking a phone call, we'd like you to walk and talk if you can. And so they have these contests: who has the most steps. And when you go to their place, it is a vibrant, it is full of energy because there's all these people walking around. And they are creatives. The work they do is creative. And so the other thing is there's a big connection between getting your blood flowing and getting your brain working. And so the leader understands the physiology behind this. And so don't miss this. He took his financial energy, $300 a pop, and he doesn't have that many new hires, right? Like maybe two a month, one a month, then there's no new hires. Like he's behind 6 or 7 of these things a year. It's the best money this guy spends. Get everybody walking.
I completely agree. I love hearing stuff like that. And
Me
we
too.
actually, in my previous company, two of the other partners were just we were working so hard and they were feeling like they were having a tough time getting in their exercise. And so we did something similar. We bought as a company, I already had one. I'm wearing it right now. I love it. But we bought two.
Do you have a Whoop?
I have an Apple Watch.
Oh, okay, me too.
But we bought an Apple Watch for the two of them. And then what we decided to do is we had very set structures for what we were all paying ourselves. But we decided, hey, if you guys are really trying to be healthy and to try to keep your health in check and you felt very busy, in order to kind of prioritize that, let's just decide we'll have certain incentives that you can get as bonuses if you hit your health objectives. And it really did help them because they were able to track it and show it, and then they got the bonuses and they would feel healthier at the same time. I think putting some kind of corporate wellness program is what I would call it into your company is a really, really underrated, not prioritized thing that people should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, because here's the truth, if you feel bad in your body, you're thinking about it instead of thinking about your work. And if you feel good, you're not worried. Like my back doesn't hurt today, so I'm up and out of my chair. I'm running around. I'm getting stuff done. So your physical well-being is so vital.
I completely agree. Nicole, is there anything else that you would want to leave the audience with today?
Well, I have so loved being here today, and I loved going through the Shine coaching methodology with you. I think if I was going to just say one more thing, I would just say, one thing about habit work is, you put one good habit in place, it will chase a bad habit out the back door. So, think about a habit you want to put in place, and that, the old thing was it takes 30 days to get a good habit in place. Well, they've debunked that. It depends on the human. It's just all over the board. There's no way to quantify it by 30 days or whatever. But I think getting a habit tracker app on your phone is really important. And I think, leaders, they might be thinking, I can't tell people to put habits in place. And I'm like, absolutely, you can. You can tell people, like, A, I want you to be on time. B, I want you to meet your deadlines. Number three, I want you keep your office cleaned up. You know what I mean? People who work in a clean environment do much better work than people who work in a mess. So, you could challenge your employees to work on a habit, keep each other accountable for a period of time, and see, just like you could get your steps in, how many great habits you could get in a year.
I love it. And it just goes back to what you said before. People can change if they have the right leader.
100%. That's right. That's right. Somebody who's challenging us and who is doing the work his or herself.
That's the key. Lead by example.
Yeah. There it is. It's an oldie but a goodie.
Well, I've loved having you on so much. This has been insightful, wonderful, a breath of fresh air, and very,
Oh, thank you.
of course, and very tactical at the same time. I think it's really important to make these things tactical and actionable, and I think you do a really great job of that with all these frameworks. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. And this has been Nicole Greer on Profession Session, and we're going to go ahead and tune out there. And that's a podcast.